what is the right thing? Do you think an enterprise guide, you think the AI guidance system, which in a lot of ways is like the intelligence that's helping support the people, do you think that should be part of the Ethereum stack? Do you think that should be part of a telephony stack? Do you think it should be part of a, I don't know, like a workforce optimization stack or some other stack? And it's not clear, right? It's not clear. There's a case to be made that your AI guidance system should be, its own layer and have it interact with any of the other layers that you want. And of course, that's what Kajito does.
Josh Feist is CEO and co-founder rather of Kajito, which is a really, really interesting series of AI-based applications informing the CX world and also the HR world. And so first, Josh, thanks for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. But I'm hoping you can do a better job of describing what Kajito does than I just have.
Oh, Mike, thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for hosting. Kajito is a real-time guidance system for enterprise contact centers. So what does that mean? That means it's a system that will help agents while they're speaking on the phone with customers, and will help them improve their relationship and their emotional connection with customers on the phone, as well as guide them through workflow so there's more efficiency. So that's sort of one piece. The next is it helps supervisors and team leads support those agents, understand what's going on with interactions, manage coaching and coaching plans. Then additionally to that, it provides value to operational leaders in terms of helping understand what is the customer experience, how to boost things like revenue per call or CSAT per call. It also helps operational leaders understand the employee or the agent experience. Not every conversation that happens between a customer and an agent is nice for that agent, and you can kind of get ahead of that and then support those agents if things are not as easy for them. And then finally, we support what you think was the learning and development part of the organization. So a big part of what the tool does is it will increase the speed to proficiency of new hires who join a large enterprise contact center.
So, if I may speak boldly, everybody's got an AI-based something right now. And I think I'm looking forward to the time when the world shakes out a little bit and we can actually discern what's valuable and what is just, eye candy. But having interacted with you and your team and seen some of your materials, it sure seems to me like the Kajito proposition is purpose built to add. It would be silly to say add value, but to add some critical value to conversations that have the potential to make or break customer relationships and employee relationships, for that matter. That's me editorializing wildly. So hopefully you'll correct me if I'm out there. But can you talk a little bit about how Kajito goes about doing that? But I think maybe even just as interesting is the journey from where you were to where Kajito was kind of first conceived, founded, and where it is now, because this isn't the kind of thing you come up with over a beer, or maybe it is, but there was probably a lot more that went into this than that.
No, thank you very much for asking. And maybe it is good for me to sketch the quick sort of history and then land on the sort of how we do what we do. So
that would be great.
So Kajito is definitely an AI company before it was cool. So we're kind of watching with excitement and amusement as all the hype starts happening. Kajito started over a decade ago. Originally, it was a bunch of basic science at MIT. Where my co-founder, Sandy Pentland, who's a professor, had done this really amazing research showing how you could train a computer to read human psychological state from behavior. That was kind of like the core and it was really like fundamental basic science. I got excited about it. I came and was at MIT, and I got excited about the research because I'd had prior work experience where I'd seen how difficult it is to manage a large kind of human-oriented organization where your job is to interact with customers or clients. And you can't use the sort of management techniques that you do to build a car, for example.
Right.
You really have to think about it differently. Like the quality of interaction really matters. In some ways, that's a major output of what you are doing as a sort of customer-focused organization. But typically, you haven't been able to measure that very well. That's a great example. And certainly, you haven't been able to coach or drive to those outcomes traditionally. So I thought, wow, if this could go from basic science to an actual technology and then to a product, wow, like we can really make an impact into a huge part of sort of human endeavor. So then it was a journey of love, of course, because these things always are. We went from basic science to applied technology. And to do that, we were sponsored by the National Institutes of Health and also DARPA, which is the high-tech funding arm of the DoD. But the reason we were funded, and this is sort of interesting, is because at that time, there were a lot of soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan with distress issues, PTSD, depression, various things like that. So we were funded in order to take our technology and come up with a way to automatically understand and measure psychological distress in vulnerable populations. So we worked in healthcare as a result for a very long time, and we continue to work, in various capacities with government healthcare as well. And so from there, we basically started working to help nurses when they were interacting with patients, particularly patients with long-term chronic disease, to recognize distress in basically what you think of as comorbid depression, which is basically if you're also depressed, plus you're looking after yourself, you can't look after yourself as well. So you're trying to detect that and then apply extra help to people. And of course, of doing that, we realized that actually there was another way we could look at this, which was even more interesting, which was we could help the nurses with their phone side manner when they talk to the agents, how to become more engaging. And then if you're more engaging, you could help people support their healthcare more effectively. And then within those, we started working with large health insurers. Within those same customers, they said, well, it's great that you're doing this over in this clinical part of the world. Why don't you do it in customer service? And we could do that. And so we just started working in customer service. And so we were suddenly working in all these different parts of these large organizations. And then sort of the predictable thing happened. Salesforce came along and some others said, this is really cool. Why don't we fund you and help you grow and be a broader-based enterprise AI company? And so that's what happened. So, since raised venture capital and now we service organizations across tech, telco, hospitality, obviously healthcare, insurance, and also North America and now in Europe. And so that's been a little bit of our journey.
Yeah, a wild ride for sure, especially since you were doing AI before anybody else was really thinking in those terms. Now the whole world is wondering, which kind of puts you in a unique position to actually understand the potential of technology. So
that's right. And the limitations, which I think is also really important to understand, because that speaks to application design.
I would love to talk about that a little bit too, because I think the way the marketing public is thinking about AI right now, it's literally a sky's the limit. I wonder if it can make my fill in the blank. And very few people are talking about its limitations in any other way than, say, I think a growing concern is about biases and misuses and those kinds of things. But you're in a very good position to be talking about what it can't and shouldn't do. So I'm still very, very interested in talking about what Kajito does in the marketplace, because the applications here are vast, as you now know, and I'm just now learning. But do I understand this correctly? And I'm going to be if this is a dumb question, I'll edit it out. But so does Kajito do what it does just based on voice signals, or are there other signals that the technology is interpreting beyond that?
So what Kajito does from a sort of a data perspective is it's receiving a streaming voice conversation between two parties or multiple parties. And then what it's doing is it's looking at how the parties are speaking and interacting, which is sometimes referred to as emotion AI. Basically, it's really pulling information about what you can think of as your non-verbal signaling. It's also looking at what the parties are saying to each other and guiding those things. And so then what the agent is receiving while they're speaking on the phone are basically in-call visual prompts that are cueing them to adjust how they speak and what they say to drive efficiency, effectiveness, and experience. So it's kind of like the core of this. And like a nice metaphor for the tool as you think about your guidance in a modern car, right? You think like lane departure warning, right? You're driving your car, and if the kids are screaming in the back and you're gonna drive off the lane, you'll get a little nudge to stay in the lane, so it can help, really save you in the same way it can help save a conversation.
Interesting.
And if you're in the lane and everything's good, then there's nothing to do.
Right.
Yep.
That's a really interesting way of doing it. I was part of a test cohort. This is probably about three months ago, maybe a bit longer. From an AI powered, basically salesperson. The company was developing it was looking for people who were more or less objective and could evaluate the effectiveness of the bot having a conversation with me, trying to sell me something. And what was remarkable to me was that it effectively read my pauses and hesitations and seemed to respond really, really well to all of it, which takes an enormous amount of processing power to reach back, read, what those signals have meant historically, and then processes it in real time to deliver, in the moment responses that are meaningful. I was completely blown away, and it sounds like you're doing similar things for agents, for employees, for nurses, throughout. It's just wild.
No, that's right. And one of the things is you've sort of got these applications, they have sort of the design of how you interact with the user. That's obviously critical to that, way that, delivers AI strengths and also manages its limitations, as we've mentioned. Then you've got the models themselves, right? And you hope that they're really robust and in some ways magical. And then you've got the computing system, right? And that's a huge part of what we do. Like, for example, we have customers who are deployed on over 30,000 agents, all receiving real-time, in-the-moment feedback, and it has to be few tens of milliseconds. Because, like, for example, if I rudely interrupt you and I'm going to get a little cue to tell me not to do that, or suggest I don't do that, if that happens 10 seconds later, it's too bad. You're already offended, right? So it really has to be there. It's like your lane departure warning in a conversation, right? In a drive, you can't be late on that, right? And so that's exactly right. This issue of compute and efficient compute, because you also have to do this at an acceptable cost, becomes a critical kind of hidden capability.
Finfair Connect drives incrementality to data-driven loyalty platforms. With over 15 million consumers using their services, they're one of the leading personalized offers platform in the UK, US, and Australia, providing a one-stop solution for open banking, card-linked, affiliate offers, and gift cards. As part of Finfair Inc., which provides modern expense management solutions to SMBs, Finfair Connect is literally transforming the payment-linked offer space by creating full, self-service, white-label portals for advertisers and publishers, thus enabling advertisers to reach hundreds of publishers via one portal, saving time and, of course, money. Check them out at connect.finfair.com. Are there, as CEO, I get to ask CEO related questions about the company overall, where you're trying to take it, et cetera. But you've mentioned a handful of different spaces and verticals that you're playing in deeply. Are there places that you are not quite playing yet to your full desire or capacity where you would like to be? I mean, where do you see Kajito's technology and ability being deployed in the near future that it's not now?
Well, excellent question. So, I think about first the sort of the components of what we're trying to do. So we want to have guidance, want to have really good coaching, want to generate really good insights, and also support compliance. And we also want to, really deliver quality. And those kind of pillars, those 4 pillars, are kind of from a product perspective where we think a AI guidance system needs to be, right? Those are the things that we think it needs to do. And we have all of those pieces, some very well built out, some a little bit earlier, but everything is there. Where we're excited right now is we have, now a long-standing commitment to service and a lot of success in driving improvements in service in a whole range of verticals. But some of the most recent data we have has now really validated our ability to improve sales. and not just services sales, but pure sales. So for us, that's a very big expansion. It took a lot of work to get there. The few times I tried it, we didn't succeed. And now we've really got it to a point where it really, really makes a difference. We can build trust, we can manage the workflow, we can drive upsell, cross-sell in very highly regulated environments with very kind of stringent customers at large scale. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm also excited about two other things. One is international expansion, because we have had some really nice successes, in again, sort of Europe and sort of in the Americas, which have been wonderful to see the system really perform in multiple languages with multiple cultures. It worked in the lab, and now we know it's working well. So I'm really excited about that. And then the last thing is, traditionally, Kajito has been an organization that serviced really large companies only. And one of the reasons is we couldn't really figure out how to service smaller companies economically. We just couldn't figure out how to do it. Like we mentioned, the cost of compute and like just everything that's required to do this. But now we've got the system to the point where we think we can start servicing kind of what we think of as that mid-market or upper mid-market enterprise. We've taken on a couple of customers judiciously to make sure that we can do it. But that's really good because it should be what happens with these technologies, right? Very large companies can afford them first because they can deploy them at scale and sort of amortize the cost over the large scale. And then as the technology delivery costs, we start building that more efficiency, we can start opening it up and that's only got to be a good thing. So I'm really thrilled about those three elements.
Really exciting. Yeah. For a small to medium sized mid-market business to be able to even think that they could afford anything like this is a pretty wild consideration for a lot of people. That's a really big deal. So your international expansion also really exciting. Are you again, this is more of like business process and model questions rather than the technology, but is Kajito driven mostly by a kind of a direct sales model as opposed to kind of a partnership, or maybe you're embedded as a white label component into other technologies, or is it all of the above?
We're largely direct sales, which reflects our sort of traditional business model of working directly with large enterprise customers. So that's sort of the traditional way to do it. Now that we're starting to get our toes wet in the mid-market, we're starting to work more closely with partners with some significant success, actually. So I'm pretty excited about it, although for us, it's still relatively early days comparatively. We aren't white labeling our technology. Not something that we have an aversion to. It's just focus. It's just focus. That being said, it's quite common for customers when they want to deploy Kajito, they may have their own, think of single pane of glass on the desktop. And so our technology is an integrated part of the overall sort of agent or supervisor and ops leader and L&D quality team dashboard. And so then we encourage that. That can be really nice to just have these sort of guidance. It should be part of the whole. It's not. But you can deploy Kajito separately, and that works absolutely fine. But that is also a really nice approach we found for UI UX.
I'm also this would be much better conversation over a couple of beers, clearly. But the everything you've described about Kajito seems to me to make you a very, very, very ripe acquisition target for somebody. And it's none of my business necessarily, and you probably can't go into it in detail in this forum, but do you envision Kajito being a kind of standalone entity over the course of its life, or can we even talk about that at this point? So, what are your views?
Well, it's an excellent question. And I think, with respect to Kajito, both are possible, but I think the bigger question is sort of like, if you think about Kajito just in terms of the category that it represents, so the category of products, this kind of real-time guidance system. I think when you think about an enterprise's stack, right? What is the right thing. Do you think an enterprise guy, you think the AI guidance system, which in a lot of ways is like the intelligence that's helping support the people, do you think that should be part of the Ethereum stack? Do you think that should be part of a telephony stack? Do you think it should be part of a, I don't know, like a workforce optimization stack or some other stack? And it's not clear, right? It's not clear. There's a case to be made that your AI guidance system should be, its own layer, and have it interact with any of the other layers that you want. And of course, that's what Kajito does. It has integrations to all the major players, because of course we have to have that to function. So I can see it sort of both ways. And and if you're a vendor that sells in the Ethereum stack or the telephony stack or any of the other stacks, you can see why you want to potentially also deliver the AI stack, which is where almost certainly a lot of the value is going to come, right? And we do see that with players that are dominant in those other layers, and have been around longer. They all, developing AI features at a frenetic pace, because it's not a surprise, right? That's sort of the case. So I think it's an interesting question, sort of aside from Kajito, about kind of what is right. But I definitely think there's a case to be made that kind of the quote unquote AI intelligence layer is its own layer.
It's going to be fun to watch and see how that kind of manifests itself out there in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of some statistics that I'd love to talk with you about. There's an apparent conflict, I think, out there brewing that you're probably in a great place to comment on. But here, I'll just pull this one straight out here. Over half of consumers prefer to chat with a live agent via phone, compared to 17% who prefer technology communications. Yet, SurveyMonkey workforce survey, 72% of respondents who use AI recognize that automation significantly increases productivity. So there's a bit of tension in there.
Yeah.
I don't think this is necessarily binary. It's not a winner take all. There's probably a complex series of sliding scales. But how does that get worked out? Because human interaction will always have value with actual. So anyways, let me not project, and I'm just going to listen to you. How do you think through that?
How do I think about that? Look, excellent question. The model, I basically use the following model. To try to simplify in my own mind, I use the following model, and it basically says this: there's service, and then there's self-service, and they're not the same thing. And the difference is that with service, you take the monkey off your back, you give it to another human, and they solve a problem for you, right? And it's like an emotional experience as well as a practical experience. With self-service, you're given tools and you solve the problem yourself with the tools that are made available. So they're not good or bad. They're just, I think where the confusion comes is when you have self-service masquerading as service.
Right.
And then people are like, oh, and every time in my experience that people make that mistake, they end up in the wrong place. And you with the promise of, for example, of this theoretical chatbot that can do everything a human can do, like that's really something we try to blur those lines. And mostly, that people have been disappointed by that, but they haven't been disappointed when it's been used really for what it's capable of doing, which is really a self-service tool. Right? So that's the mental framework I use. And so then when you sort of you go from there and say, well, okay, what's going to happen in the future, right? So what I'll tell you, first I'll just tell you what the data shows up to now. The data shows up to now is that the economy grows. Also, everybody gets richer, so they all want service, because everybody wants service. Everyone wants somebody else to take care of their problem, right? Of course they do. I do, you do, everybody does, right? But you have to be able to afford it. But people are getting richer over time, and the economy is growing over time. So the demand for service is always increasing. However, self-service tools also increase. And that what we see, it's just like healthcare costs. The demand for service keeps going, but it bends the curve. It stops it from getting exponentially larger, because you're continuing to invest in self-service technologies. And we've been doing this since the mail order catalog, right? So, so that's how I think, that's how I kind of look at it. And so, so Kajito has focused its efforts to date on enhancing what you can think of as service. It's not to say the technologies can't be used for, self-service, but that's sort of where we focused. And so what you see on that survey, just to kind of get back to that, is we see that Consumers continue to want service when they want service. They're increasingly becoming very comfortable with the idea that that service is going to be enhanced by AI behind the scenes. Like they're like very, very comfortable with that. We also see that agents, this is a huge change in the last couple of years, like call center agents are actually demanding AI assistance because part of upskilling themselves and being ready for the workforce of the future. So that's, that's wonderful. And then I think we see, good success with self-service tools as long as they're framed appropriately and not framed to be something that they can't actually do.
In my role here, our role here at the customer, we interact with a lot of people in the CX space and increasingly in the EX space, HR. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, there's literally everybody has some AI powered, some
of course,
gadget gizmo, bell or whistle. And I almost think that right now in today's environment, it's a necessity. If you're not talking about that, people wonder why. But I know that some of these companies have invested ungodly sums of money into developing large language models that power certain aspects of their platforms and suites. And some of them are quite sophisticated and really, frankly, cool. But I don't see anybody, and I could be completely wrong here, but I haven't seen in my work anyone who is pursuing AI-driven conversational analysis, if that's what it is, with the kind of emotional sentiment component that you guys have seemed to have developed really, really well. And it makes me wonder if, did they just not know about Kajito, or is it just so easy and cheap to start developing your own large language models and the algorithms that power the AI and machine learning behind them, that it was just like, well, we'll just do this and then we own it, rather than licensing something existing and amazing like what you have?
Oh, I like you saying that. I think you're right that there are very few organizations that specialize in what you can think of as the emotion AI part of things. And one of the reasons is that it's kind of a different technology. There's a lot of signal processing and there's a lot of kind of complex integrations. Like, so it's hard. It's like hard. That's the problem. It's a hard thing, right? And I think that the excitement around large language models, which is well justified, was the fact that you basically can take a machine learning model, and I'm oversimplifying that, and train it on the internet. And the internet is a whole bunch of text. So what is there not? What is there not? A whole lot of voice conversations. And also voice conversations are typically, from a sort of societal perspective, we treat them very carefully. Like we don't like our conversations out there. We're like very like, we want to know that conversations are being recorded, and we should, right? Like it feels very close to us. Our voice feels very personal to us, right? Whereas the words we use is something external, right? So there's sort of there's a little bit more of a more difficult set of data to work with. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the other part of it is the kind of emotion AI, what we think of, you have to have good science behind it. Like the reason I got excited about getting in this field is because we had really strong basic science showing that this wasn't like it wasn't going to be sort of like, I don't know, something that doesn't work or doesn't have like a really good framework or a really good sort of psychological basis, like a basis in like how humans work, rather than sort of a basis in how statistics work, right? And that I think is also sort of why this is a little bit more of a challenging area. And then I think the last part is that, and this is where we've gone to as an industry, right? So Kajito started off really focusing only on emotion AI, and then it's expanded its technologies to include conversation and generative and all that. But really where the frontier is now, what they think of as multimodal, which is how do you really combine all this? Kajito, we refer to it just because we prefer this is really what you want is context-aware guidance, right? You want the guidance that you're giving to take into account everything that's going on. So, take a trivial example, right? If we're going to say, if the right thing in the workflow is let's attempt to upsell, cross-sell somebody on this other product, let's do that at a good point in the conversation where the customer's receptive to that. And it's not going to be perceived as rude or like, why are you asking me that?
Right,
I'm trying to do this other thing, right? Like, so this is the sort of thing, I have like some concept of the emotional context. And And then you're going to be much more successful and much more efficient, and it's going to be much sort of better experience for everybody. That's what we mean, and that really kind of orchestration, the fusion together, is really the sort of the fun frontier right now, in my opinion.
I would like to refer you to a large U.S. drugstore chain that I interacted with yesterday that had no sense of context whatsoever in there. It was just like, and this is a big company that's got a lot of money, and you'd think just try just a little harder. So I hesitate to name them, but think of one of the two bigger drugstore chains in this country, and you've nailed it. And think of receipts they're usually about 6 feet long. That's
so if you don't mind me make a small comment on that. So there's another sort of part to this about sort of why Kajito exists. And one of the reasons Kajito exists is also that humans are perfect. Right? So we sort of talk about how humans add a lot. Like AI has got limitations. Humans add a lot. They work better together because humans have a model of the world and AI has stats, right? So that's sort of why they work so well together. But humans also have limitations. And one of the big ones that you see is a human will get something called compassion fatigue. So an agent will do 30, 40 calls a day. Not all of them are easy. Some of them may be repetitive. And what happens in your brain is after a period of time, your brain becomes fatigued. So you literally don't detect the social signals of the person you're talking to. It's not that somebody's ignoring you. They may not literally realize that you're frustrated with a particular moment in time. So that's what we think about this lane departure warning kind of concept, right? I don't need it if I'm like focused and I'm just had a coffee and it's a good time for me in the morning. But if I'm distracted, I'm tired, and something's happening in the back seat, then I need it, right? And I think that's the kind of the point of these systems and why this kind of symbiosis can get a better outcome.
It's going to be a fun, well, frankly, the next 6 months are going to be really interesting to see what else the business world starts to focus on here as we start being able to focus on it. But even more so where Kajito is going, because it seems like you are I'm overstating this clearly, but you have the dog by the tail here somewhat.
Thank you.
You've really kind of created so much of what other people are leaning into just yet. So if you're willing to open up your schedule again in another 6-9 months or so, I'd love to see if we could continue the conversation. Talk about.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I would love it. I think the people who listen to this podcast and read our material are all vitally interested in this topic. So yeah, if you're willing, I'll have my people get in touch with your people, as they say.
Amazing. I look forward to it. That'll be fantastic. Yeah.
Well, Josh Feist is CEO and co-founder of Kajito. It's been an enlightening conversation, and I cannot wait for the next time we get to do this.